To spread the love of everyday citizens to make sure I've worked for many years and Social Security and Medicare is protected.
Well, you know, that is a really important question. Social Security, Medicare, and let me raise an issue that hasn't gotten a lot of focus because I'm the ranking member on the Veterans Affairs Committee. Do we have any veterans here? Raise your hand. Medicare and, of course, Medicaid is already on the chopping block. Social Security, they're all at risk, but so are your veterans' benefits. Yes. They're trying to fly under the radar with this one. Freezing funding, freezing hiring, these veterans' benefits, and I've raised this issue, but it hasn't gotten as much traction. I hope it will. We're going to continue to pound on it. But what we will do is, first of all, deny the 60 votes that would be necessary. They may try to combine it with tax cuts or whatever. We have to oppose it at every turn and name and shame. Try to give the Republicans embarrassment not only in Washington but at home. And here is something that I think is really important to say about Social Security and Medicare. You know, people in red states don't realize what's happening. They really don't. And they, first of all, they're uninformed. Second, they're
schools, SNAP, Medicaid, and Head Start. How can we tell the President Musk and his tech bros are not withholding legally appropriated funds by Congress of our state? The people appointed by these offices are there to destroy the agency. And the second question, as we head into the 2016 election cycle, where do you see our chances of taking back one or both chambers and pump the brakes on the corruption and the criminality of this administration?
So just so you know, we are, there are only 24 hours in the day, but we are using all of them. We are in constant communication with the governor, with not-for-profit agencies, trying to understand whether there is existing misappropriation. There are certain funding streams that have not turned back on in Connecticut. So there are grants that have that are still being held, and you are starting to see the administration telegraph that they are going to give preference to red states, and they are going to penalize blue states. That's not shocking, right? But that is the future here, that they are going to start moving federal funding away from states that didn't vote for Donald Trump. Now, there's going to be court order after court order because the president doesn't get to decide where money goes. Congress decides where money goes. Already, the court orders kicked Musk's people out of the Department of Treasury, and if they try to override the funding formulas that we have written that make sure everybody gets a shot at education dollars, transportation dollars, veterans dollars, there will be court challenges to those decisions as well. So we remain in literally hourly touch with the grant recipients and with the state to try to track this, and we feed that information straight to the folks that are bringing the lawsuits so that they have the best information possible. I'll probably refrain on answering the question about the elections just because this is not a political meeting. I will just tell you that ultimately, that's what has to happen. You have to elect people that care about the Constitution, that care about democracy, that care about their neighbors. And I think as people, as their agenda is exposed, which is an agenda just to enrich their elite friends, that will ultimately have consequences.
Hi, my name is Loretta Waldman. I'm a member of Indivisible Connecticut, and your staffs know me well. My first is just a comment to the gentleman here. Broadly, I would like to invite anybody who is not a member of Indivisible, not just Connecticut, there are chapters all over the state, to please get involved. It's an existing organization that has evolved since 2017, and we have two incredible leaders who are sending down strategy, tailored to blue states, purple states, red states. There's something all of us can do. And the surge in growth and the impact of the actions that we have taken in the last 2 weeks is nothing short of just amazing. It's really that collectively and as a community together, joined, we have this kind of power. It gives me hope that we do have a future as a democracy and as a country.
Amen.
I
I just want to say, I am so proud of Indivisible, Resist, all of our organizations. You're giving us a lesson in political organizing. Exactly what we need in citizen energy and activism. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor, privilege, and beyond excited to be involved in. My question for you is, I understand based on...
Your time is exhausted.
I know there's a limit to what you can do based on procedural rules in the Senate with the nominees, and you're doing everything that you can do. Our next big fight, obviously, is this budget fight and the debt ceiling, and I would like to know from you what we can do collectively to support you in that fight and to make as much of an impact in slowing the wheels of what he's about to do, because one of my big fears is that we're going to be in this position where he's basically damaging our system so profoundly that it's going to be very difficult once these big changes are made to reverse them and save programs like Social Security and veterans benefits and things like that.
Yeah, great question. What can you do to help us? Educate, organize, amplify. Because here's what they're going to try to do, and it really goes back to the question of, disguising tax cuts. They're going to try to pass either one bill or two bills. They can't get their act together as yet, but they're going to try to make it really hard for us to do the right thing. For example, they'll have defense spending and money to build submarines, which we as senators from Connecticut would find it difficult to vote against, but we may have to. You need to get the word out as to why we are doing what we're doing, why we are voting against every one of these nominees, why we are taking the stands that we do, because, I pass the folks outside. They have a voice too. And then there are a lot of people who are not paying attention the way you are. Educate, amplify, inform. That is so important, and organize in exactly the way Indivisible and Resist are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. My name is Daniel. I'm from Blumenthal, Connecticut, and I'm 72 years old on Social Security and Medicare. I was a lifelong Republican until I moved back to my home in Connecticut in 1996, where I registered unaffiliated. I have voted for the Democratic ticket ever since. My question is as follows. With the Republicans holding the majority in the House, both the House and the Senate, what is your actual strategy for overcoming the deluge of misinformation and disinformation to ultimately bring sanity back to the executive and justice departments and save our democracy? I truly fear that we're on a fast-moving, crazy train to autocracy. And no good end in sight. I personally feel hopeless.
Well, do not feel hopeless. Look at this crowd. I understand why. You can look at this deluge of assault on democracy and decide that there's no way to fight back, but there absolutely is. There are more of us than there are of them. In just a week, Donald Trump's favorability went from what we call above water, more people approving and disapproving, to underwater. And it's happening not just amongst the crowd that's here. There's a poll that shows in just 2 weeks, Republicans went from 47% of them believing that Elon Musk should have a big role in the administration to 27%, right? So when Republicans look at Elon Musk having control of their tax data, they were like, wait a minute, right? We don't want that either. So there is an ability to organize our way out of this. And so I hope you don't feel hopeless, because I already see a path to be able to convince the broad swath of the American public that they need to be with us here. So this is an important moment. Like I said, if we survive this moment and show that they have not destroyed us right out of the box, we have the ability to win this heading, into the spring, summer, and fall. And ultimately, the elections will really matter. We sort of have to survive, right, to the elections as a democracy. And if we do that, we'll be in a position to blunt and then reverse a lot of the harm that they've made.
Thank you for being here. My name is Gail. I'm here on behalf of Shalom UCC New Haven. And as a faith community, we have faith in democracy. What my question is what do you think is going to happen with the court system? Are our court systems going to hold? I have a joyful transgender grandchild.
Well, that is a really great question. And I think there is a lesson here. First of all, aren't we glad that the Biden nominees, and I am on the Judiciary Committee, so I looked at every one of them as they came through the committee. 1/3 of all the judges now on the federal bench, 1/3 are Biden nominees. To get that done was a lot more difficult than you would think, because we were working with only one vote to spare in the majority. Tough to do, but we did it, and we worked together as a team. And now we're seeing results on the federal bench, not just from those Biden nominees, but from Reagan nominees, from Bush nominees. My answer to your question is, so far the federal courts have been a bulwark. So far they've done what judges are supposed to do. All of us take an oath. Whether you're a judge, or you're a private in the Marine Corps Reserve, as I was, or you're a senator, or you take an oath not to the President of the United States, not to any government, to the Constitution. And so far, they have been faithful to the Constitution. Just this morning, early, a judge issued an order, Judge Engelmeyer in New York, an order saying that Musk couldn't go into the Treasury Department. But of course, and he deserves appreciation. He's also going to need to be guarded because of the threat of physical violence. So this is by no means, judges sitting in that ivory tower free of threat. We need to make sure our judges are protected. But so far, yes, we can count on our judiciary. The other side of this lesson is, no one's mentioned it, no one's really focusing on it. Donald Trump's going to begin trying to appoint judges. We need to vote them down. We need to drive the judiciary to a halt. Make sure that we take as much time, delay, and make sure, I shouldn't say delay for its own sake, but of course we'll give these judges every ounce, every minute of scrutiny they deserve. And so the focus on the judiciary is very, very important. And I hope you will be in touch with us about the judiciary, just as you are on the cabinet nominees, because they are as important in any way. Lifetime appointment to the United States judiciary. And of course, the big unknown here is the United States Supreme Court. And what will be done, here is the really dark side, and I want to just give a very blunt, full answer to that question. What happens when Donald Trump says, okay, you've issued your order, enforce it? You might say that to the United States Supreme Court too. J.D. Vance has said that. We need to be prepared for that kind of blatant illegality. Now, I am hoping that at that point, my Republican colleagues will finally have some spine. Will finally stand up. But we're going to need you. We're going to need you at that moment.
Thank you.
I first want to say thank you so much, Senator Blumenthal and Senator Murphy. I mean, without you guys, I don't think we would have been where we are today, because it just seems like a lot going on, such a fast pace, and we're not able to catch on. I personally apologize. We called your phone several times. We swarmed the phone lines, and we were on it to get other folks from different states, from red states, to do the same to their senators. And so we have a little thing going. My thing is that I'm very, very intentional here. When are we going to do the civil disobedience? Because I'm ready. Even on the media, they're trying to say it, but they're not saying it. Even the attorneys are saying it's going to come down to us. So we are ready. Miss Invisible lady there, we are ready. The military buses over there talking to Crown and everybody. We need to send a clear message that is more us than them. And right now,
You reference calling our office and apologize for that. Do not apologize for that, right? You can imagine the calls that we're getting into our office from a lot of people supportive, a lot of people anxious, but obviously we're getting calls from some pretty awful voices as well. And we are so well served by the folks that work in our offices. Many of them organized this event today. It's often the interns, the 19-year-olds, the 20-year-olds who answer the phones and are on the front lines of this. And so we're very lucky to have the teams that we have. Listen, obviously, we are going to mount whatever defense, whatever legal defense is necessary to save this country. Right now, as Dick said, the courts have stepped up. Right now, the courts have done the right thing and issued rulings in accordance with the Constitution. Right now, for the most part, the administration has followed the stays. We're still collecting evidence. We don't know. It's very possible that there will be that constitutional crisis that Dick is talking about. But for now, this is really important, right? This is the first step to sort of show up in these big numbers, to display a sense of unity and outrage. This does not go without impact. So I appreciate that enthusiasm, and obviously, we are going to do whatever it takes within legal bounds to make sure that we save this country.
Hi, I'm Nathan White. I'm on the Manchester Democratic Town Committee. I have two questions. First of all, prior to the certification of the election, Democrats had an opportunity to force a debate, because it only takes 20% of each house, to force a debate on whether the 14th Amendment should have been applied to prevent Agent Orange from taking the presidency. And clearly did cause rebellion and insurrection against the government. Why wasn't that done, and why is it not continued to be done? Because that really is the heart of this. If it continues to do that, it's going to weaken this presidency. And my second question is, you talk about federal workers. I need help from either one of your staffers, because I had a job offer from the IRS that was revoked. I should have started on January 27th as a mathematical statistician in international business and large business. And even Otten & Golden, the biggest employment law firm in the country, would not take my case. I need help from someone in your staff who will take my case.
I don't know about that, the specific 14th Amendment debate tactic, but, you know, the Democrats, but really the people who hold office, whether it's U.S. senators or the Vice President at the time, Kamala Harris, made a decision that we were going to show our better angels, so to speak, that we were going to show what a peaceful transition of power looks like. That was before a lot of what we see since. If we had known what was coming.
We knew what was coming. Boo! You knew what he was going to do.
We are in a different era now. We're in a different era. And I will tell you that we're going to leave no stone unturned. We're going to leave no tactic unused. And we are going to make sure that whether it is that one or any others in a similar kind of challenge, we will be ready, we'll be nimble, and we'll be as aggressive in fighting as we can.
Let me just say, as we go to the next question, let me just say one thing that I think is important to say. Donald Trump didn't really disguise what he was going to do during the campaign, right? Donald Trump said that he was going to be a dictator on day one. He said that Democrats were the #1 enemy to the country, and he still won. And so that is, and I've been pretty vocal about this. That's an indictment of the Democratic Party, right? So people in this country did not believe that we were really going to stand up and fight for working people. They did not believe that we were going to fundamentally change the way that the government works so that it stands up for regular people. So amidst this moment, where this is a political comment, I understand, and I said we tried not to do politics here, but amidst this moment in which we need to fight back, we also have to do a very hard look at the Democratic Party to make sure we're speaking out.
Hello, Senators. My name is Sarah. I'm from Waterford, Connecticut. My question is a little bit different because I haven't heard anything on this yet. With all the chaos and everything that we need to organize and fight against, who is protecting our intelligence agencies? The people in that, the people that are abroad, that have worked so hard, spies, all of those people that bring us information and keep this country safe. What is being done to protect those agencies and the way we collect information? And I mean, it's up for sale right now. Tulsi Gabbard is not going to protect that information. So who is protecting that, and how do we protect that so that that doesn't fall in the hands of Putin, North Korea, and the people that want that information?
Yeah. Well, right after he was sworn in, there was an attempt to sort of speed through several confirmations, and there was a request made to speed the confirmation of the director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, and there was a request made that everybody had agreed to do 2 hours of debate. 2 hours of debate, that was it, on John Ratcliffe. And that was what was going to happen. I went to the floor of the Senate and was the sole objector to speeding through John Ratcliffe's nomination. Because he has a history of politicizing intelligence. He literally released a super sensitive file on the day of the debate in 2020 between Joe Biden and Donald Trump as a means to use intelligence to try to interfere with an election. And we were going to sort of sweep through his nomination just a day after they had pardoned all these January 6 rioters. They're going to pretend like they care about national security after they just put 1,600 rioters back in the streets to threaten all of our lives. So listen. I'm glad that we held it up, but there's not a great satisfactory answer to your question right now, because We need the courts to put back in place all of the inspectors general. We need our Republican colleagues to vote against some of these nominees that are going to corrupt our intelligence services. The courts will still do a lot of this work, right? The courts, may reinstate the IGs. The courts may ultimately protect some of our intelligence officials, but until we can try to get Republicans to stand up here, it is the courts that we're going to have to rely on, and we have to use these opportunities when we're debating these nominees to raise these issues for the American public.
Yeah.
My name is Hillary Carpenter. I work in refugee resettlement in Windsor, and I'm also an attorney. I represent immigrants, both documented and undocumented. They're terrified. We have immigration lawyers that are telling their clients not to show up for their court hearings because it's not worth the risk getting picked up by ICE. We have refugees that are here legally that don't know that their status even protects them anymore, and I don't know what to tell them. So my question for you, and this is echoing off of what was said a little bit earlier, is how far are you willing to go to protect these vulnerable populations? South Korean legislators were willing to fight truth to get into buildings that they had a right to be in. John Lewis put his life at risk. Reaching out to Republicans is nice, but that is not enough. We want to know how far you're going to go.
Let me just put in a plug for Iris. Everybody knows Iris. And Syria. Be in New Haven tomorrow. Wilbercross High School. Run for Refugees. Noon. And you can show your support. Now, there's going to be a snowstorm. Right? I'm going to be there as long as they have it. But that kind of showing is very important. We need more than showing. We're going to fight for legislation, and we're going to try to fight for pieces of legislation that will really make a difference. On the temporary protected status program, on the special immigration visa program, SIV, talking about the Afghan refugees. The administration has pulled the flights for 1,600 Afghan refugees. They have targets on their backs. They can't return to Afghanistan. They have helped us. The Taliban will kill them and their families. But those 1,600 refugees no longer have plans to come here because the administration has stopped them.
Take
So,
the 1,600 January 6 guys and send
we
them
will
to
go
them.
and we will do and go as far as we can to be effective. We have to be effective. That's what John Lewis did. He was effective. And if you have ideas, this is an ongoing conversation. This is an ongoing conversation. I'm learning as I listen to you, as questions are raised about what we can and should do, but we need to work together and we need to be part of a team. We can't alone get stuff done. Alone, we can take stands, and we will, but to stop bad stuff from happening, we need to work together as a team.
Thank you both for your leadership. My name is Ann Standback. I am here today with my friend Jim Boucher and a large group from Emmanuel Congregational Church in Hartford and our friends at the ACLU of Connecticut. We have been gathering each Saturday morning since the inauguration to support each other, a growing group of us, to share our fears and our outrage and to figure out what we can do to help the most vulnerable people in our neighborhood and our city of Hartford. Our values as a church are not being reflected in Washington. Those values of feeding the hungry and standing with the immigrant and standing with our transgender neighbors. We have decided that as you said earlier, Senator Murphy, we've got to show up. We are going to be holding a visibility action this coming Friday at 7:30 in the morning on our busy corner of Farmington Avenue and Woodland Street, across from the Mark Twain House. We invite the two of you, we invite everyone here in this room to join us to show our values, because the people, we all share those values. Jim has some flyers if you would like those. So my question is, for faith communities in particular, what can we do to really counter what we do not feel are our faith values being reflected in Washington? How can we uniquely help this fight?
Well, thank you for what you're already doing, and count us in to be a part of it and to amplify what you're doing. So, I mean, I laid out the case that I think is the truest and the most potent in terms of changing people's minds, and that's the case around the billionaire capture of our government, the illegal, unconstitutional billionaire capture of our government. But it is also true that people in this country are not as mean as this crowd is. And yet, when they see this kind of meanness...
The Trump crowd, not
Trump
you.
Sorry. This crowd being the Trump crowd, so... Thank you, partner. But yet, when they see this kind of hatred and meanness normalized, they look around and wonder, well, maybe that's what my country is. Maybe actually my neighbors have signed up for this kind of inhumane treatment of human beings. And so, this has got to be a multi-systemic effort. And one of the things we need to do is to show people that that is not who we are. And it is and it is okay for you to decide, perhaps, to align yourself with folks who might not share your specific political values just because you don't want this country to be defined by division and hatred. And the way that you give people confidence to do that is not just through politics, it's just by doing good works. And showing folks that this is actually who we are and this is who you should be as well. So, I mean, there's so many different lines of effort here. The rallies and the actions are important, but just modeling the kind of behavior that actually is in the heart of human beings, it's part of what a good resistance movement is.
And since you're a veteran of our state political process, as you well know, state and local governance is really important.
Yes.
To focus your attention on electing good people.
Yes.
We're lucky in West Hartford, in fact, we're lucky in Connecticut to have some great state legislators. They are here today. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your steadfastness and courage. But that's true all around the country. On gun violence, where Chris Murphy and I have really sought at the national level to change and reform our laws, good things are happening at the state level. That is where a lot of the progress has been made. And when you reach out, it should be to the faith community and to our state leadership and to state leaders in other parts of the country, because they're on the ground. The governors of red states are looking at their budgets and they're saying, you mean you're cutting off our transportation block grants? I've got a road that's halfway done. I don't care whether it's President Trump or Sean Duffy, the Commissioner, the Secretary of Transportation. I gotta finish this road. So reaching out, and I keep saying, reaching out to the Republicans, the red states, to state governments, to the faith community. I was late, and I apologize getting here, because I was at the funeral of Reverend Dr. Perry, a wonderful faith leader, senior pastor at the Union Baptist Church in Stamford, with a crowd even bigger than this one. We need to reach out to those people through the faith community. So you're absolutely right. Great point about using those connections, because the Constitution is what ultimately, I think, will provide the bulwark what the American people, I think, will respond to. Chris's point is absolutely right. The American people are better than this administration.
I'm just going to preview for you that we're not going to be able to get to everybody in line here, and I apologize. We are working 24/7 right now, and so we're keeping a schedule around the state and in Washington. So it's not because we don't love you, but because we're trying to do everything possible. So I'm going to recommend that we sort of do 2 at a time here, and we'll try to respond to 2 at a time, and we'll maybe get through a third or half of this line. So go ahead. Please keep it short, and we'll keep it short.
Sure. Thank you very much, Betty Marafino, West Hartford, and President of the Connecticut Alliance for Retired Americans. 2 words that go through my mind and hearing all of this is good trouble. John Lewis has been recognized. And as a former teacher, I have an assignment for everybody, if I may. The Alliance was part of a large task force. We just successfully passed the Social Security Fairness Act with a large bipartisan vote in the House and the Senate. And one of the ways we were successful, and here's my assignment, we had everyone around on our task force around the country have them contact their family and friends who live in other states, especially red states, and call their congressperson and talk to them about all the things we've been discussing today. So that's my assignment. It worked on the bill, and I think it can work again.
Thanks, Patty.
Just in brief, again, we're here to stand with you. We're here to stand with you every moment, every day, every week to protect these human rights and these human needs. My question is around DEI, and I'm going to just talk more about this as, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the kind of work that's been going on. And what we're seeing, right, is that I'm with a number of organizations who have their funds frozen that support the very people that the core values of diversity, equity, and inclusion stands for. Tens of thousands of people right now as we stand here today are losing services and needs. And one just hear a little bit more, because you've had your lifetime built on those core values. We'd like to hear you speak a little bit more about those core values, and that we're going to move those forward and move the kind of resources to our vulnerable communities that should be getting these resources.
Great. You can ask a question, and we'll do both. Do questions.
Dan Weinrod, West Hartford. 2 very quick things. One thing is, we have a group with a lot of multiple opinions about what should we do when the time comes and what happens when we come next when, for example, the court orders aren't in fact respected or maintained. I implore you to work as hard as you've been working, but when the time comes, you're our leaders. Give us the signal for when we need to take further action. Okay? You can do the great work. Keep it up. At some point, if there's that need, we need to hear from you. You were very good at that from, with USAID. The other question, very quickly, that I have is around the House. And what I've heard, what I'm hearing is the House Democratic leadership is not potentially willing to play hardball on this. I don't want to cast aspersions on our Connecticut delegation in the House and the like, but do you have any comment on that? Anything we can do to make sure that the House really works as hard as you guys have in the Senate?
I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I agree with Dick. You have to be strategic about this, but we're going to have to do exceptional things over the course of the next 6 months to save our democracy. The House doesn't have the same ability we do, right? They need our votes to do certain things in the Senate. They don't need any Democratic votes to pass anything in the House. I think, as I mentioned at the outset, there is just some disagreement as to whether you sort of reserve power and sort of use it occasionally or whether you use it every single day. I told you earlier, I'm in the category of use whatever power you have every single minute of every single day. And on this question of DEI, I think the thing that we can do is just call it out every single time for what it is. It is white male supremacy. Right? is, and they aren't even trying to hide what it is. They aren't even trying to hide what it is. Within hours of that plane crashing, they basically came out and said, the reason that this country isn't safe is because we have women and people of color working in airports and the FAA. They're not even trying to hide what they're doing here. At West Point, they shut down all the ethnic clubs except for the white European ethnic clubs. They're not trying to hide what they're doing, so don't let them get away with this. Call it out for what it is, because people do not support that, right? It is true that, like, you know, the consultancy that comes into your company and, you know, yeah, some people may not, you know, be down with, they're not down with white male supremacy, right? They're not on board for an all-out attack on the idea that the only people who can do jobs in our government are men of one race. It is just not where the bulk of this country is. So don't let them get away with what they are selling. Call it out for what it is.
And Chris is absolutely right. It is white male supremacy. But in addition to calling it out in the abstract, also point out the success stories. You know, the new Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, gave a speech yesterday, his first town hall, and he spent the whole time denouncing DEI. He did it in front of an audience filled with African Americans, Asian Americans, immigrants. If you ask the military about DEI, they'll say, we need to reach out. We're short on recruitment. We need to get that talent and energy. If you ask the business community, DEI, we need to diversify. Diversification helps us make sure that America understands that DEI is not about discriminating against anyone. It is elevating, it is raising up American heroes and talent. DEI exemplifies American values, and for Donald Trump to denounce minorities because there was a plane crash is the ultimate demagoguery. It's what we saw, and I hate to say that, it's what we saw in Germany. It's what we saw in Germany before the ultimate atrocities happened. And we need to stop it now. Do not just read over. Do not take it for granted. Do not be complacent. We need to tell other Americans, and many of you have contacts in the business community. You know, there's another community that needs to be energized. They're all, frankly, trying to go along. This is not a time for going along. We need to reach out to them and tell them our democracy is at stake. They know that diversity in their workplaces, equity and inclusion makes them stronger. Okay, two on each side.
My name is Nicholas. I actually work in this building with the special needs population. And the question I have is, most of the problems that we're seeing seem to be executive branch, and we're relying on the judiciary to help us. And we're congressmen, senators. Do you have any plans, whether it be now as the opposition party or in the future when things may swing back or in power, to kind of build out safeguards for your branch of government? Because right now, it just seems like these other groups are coming in to take your powers away, to kind of assert control of your spending over everything that is legislated. What's the question? The question is, if there's anything that you guys are planning to do to safeguard that in the future?
Hi, my name is Karen Weingrod. I'm from West Hartford. Quick question related to the evisceration of USAID. pay freezes. My son's company, which is a long-time NGO, Global Health NGO, furloughed 80% of its staff from this past week. LinkedIn and his account is full of his colleagues and friends who had no jobs. So the question is, for the glimmers of hope being provided by tiny waivers here and there, or in Africa, is there a possibility that there really will be continued funding for some of these efforts, and will the NGOs be paid?
This is a longer conversation, but Congress has empowered the executive over the course of decades in a way that is indefensible, right? I have been fighting for a long time on the issue of war powers, right? I have brought resolution after resolution on the floor of the Senate with Democratic presidents and Republican presidents to deny presidents the ability to go to war without the consent of the people. And so you are right that this is a moment for us to take a step back and have some self-reflection on what the legislative branch has done to empower an executive to be even in a position to get away with this kind of corruption. So count me in for that work. On USAID, the court order yesterday puts all those USAID employees back to work. I can report to you this morning, early this morning, an email went out to all USAID employers and contractors that they are to report back on the job, and so those contracts are once again being. I have been deeply, and I'm a member of the Foreign Relations Committee, many of you know I'm deeply engaged in foreign policy. I've spent much of the last 3 days digging into this waiver process. The idea was that, the funds were frozen, but you could petition the king, right, to have your money turned back on. The waiver program didn't exist. It was pretend, right? Like all of this is pretend. Nobody was getting waivers because there was nobody to process the waivers because they'd fired 98% of the staff. And so I did a long sort of statement yesterday, an expose yesterday on what we had found out with the waiver process, and we will continue to highlight how they lie over and over and over again about what they're actually doing. But the good news is that at least for the time being, until the case moves its way up the court system, our USAID personnel are back on the ground saving lives all around the world.
Let me just add, on that point, your son works for an NGO contractor. And let me just add about USAID, this is just a small example. Everybody assumes $40 billion going to USAID is just shelled out to people abroad. Well, it employs Americans. And it buys soybeans, corn, and wheat from American farmers. It buys pharmaceutical drugs from American manufacturers. Here again, we need to dispel the disinformation and misinformation, and across the board, make sure that people understand it is good as a humanitarian program. It's good because it serves our political self-interest abroad to prevent China from filling the vacuum and stopping terrorism, but it's also in our self-interest. And on that question, I think that we need to get Congress and the courts to protect themselves against the overreach from the executive branch. It's not just this administration, it's a continuing process, and it's not just on foreign policy, it's on executive policy. The Secretary of Transportation, day before yesterday, sent out a directive that he is going to allocate administration money for transportation based on marriage rates and numbers of children. Can you imagine something more absurd, but also more illegal? And he's doing it with a directive that needs to be challenged. So we need to make sure that the executive branch is not usurping powers in every sphere and bring it to light.
They already are.
Let's go. We're going to do three more on either side, and then we got to start day.
Hi, I'm from Durham, Connecticut, and
use that as a test for tampering with the 2028 elections. And this is why. When Trump was speaking to a Christian women's group while he was campaigning, he said, "You won't have to worry about ever voting again," and not a lot of stuff beyond that. This was on major news networks, and it's also on YouTube in case you want to see it. And number two, Republicans tampered with suppressing votes by getting voters removed from state voter lists during the 2024 election cycle. They were very aggressive at doing that. Is there anyone guarding this or monitoring it? If they can hack the Treasury, they can hack voting machines and voter lists. Voting is a tenet of our U.S. citizenship. It's why you guys are doing it. And we all rely on that. Without it, we are sunk as a democracy.
Let's go over here.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Pressman from West Hartford, and I'm a proud member of Indivisible Connecticut. In the interest of Senator Blumenthal welcoming ideas from the audience, I want to urge you to continue something, particularly Senator Murphy, that you've been doing using video clips. Some of the people, there's 500 people here or more. We're going to go talk to lots of people, but you don't see a lot of 18 to 35. And to reach those people, you have to front your colleagues in either house, like Representative Ocasio-Cortez or Representative Frost and Ford, who are out there speaking to the younger generation of our country. They're making something in the Trump administration, like cut indirects. That doesn't mean anything to people. But if people go to Children's Hospital in Hartford or in every children's hospital in this country and show that cutting indirects is cutting health care for the sickest children in our country, people will understand. So I urge you, please, front your colleagues who understand how to use that technology. And I know you both do that, but there's lots out there. Please keep doing it.
Questions at a time, so definitely trying, I'm definitely trying to get as many people in while trying to.
It was a good comment, but not a question.
I just have two quick things. Senator Murphy, you mentioned that you are seeing some Republicans wavering a little bit, questioning things. Is there a way going forward, as you're seeing this, can we know which people those are so we can pressure?
Yeah, I mean, we can, I'll let you, well, I will, but we can't count on that. So we're going to have to do this ourselves, right? With escalating tactics to raise the urgency. So I'm happy to, it's the usual suspects that get covered normally that may join us. The problem is, even if they join us in the Senate, the House Republicans are against democracy. Like, they aren't like secretly worried about the attacks on democracy. They are on board for the attacks on democracy. So for the foreseeable future, it's hard to get legislation passed through the whole process. So we are going to have to do a lot of this ourselves. We can do it ourselves. We've got a couple special elections coming up right here in Connecticut, in which we can make a statement. We can do more on the Senate floor, but we'll certainly share that information. There's just a limit to how much.
And let me address the first question that was raised about potential rigging. I think that question is extraordinarily important. Really important. How do we stop hacking? If Elon Musk is doing it in the Department of Treasury, Department of Defense, Department of Education, the Veterans Administration, what's to stop him from doing it in the town halls of Connecticut or elsewhere? We need to mount that kind of major effort that we did last time on challenges, legal challenges, and fund it through, we're not a political group here, a partisan political group, but mount it through the appropriate mechanisms to fight that kind of hacking. Absolutely right.
Is somebody doing it now?
Here we go. People are waiting in line, so let's keep the line moving.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Holly Henderson. I'm from Cincinnati.
Speak up, please.
I have two questions. The first one is, what are you going to do? What is your stance going to be when the first abortion ban makes its way out of the House into the Senate? Because we know it's coming, right? And then part two is easy, and it should be a great finish for you for this afternoon. I'm a member of SURJ, showing up for racial justice. And there are several of us here today. We're trying to connect with anybody else in this group who wants to start showing up more, marching more, being on the ground. So I have a pledge that comes directly from Surge. I pledge to show up to protect the rights, safety, and dignity of people in my community and resist Trump's anti-democratic and immoral agenda. I'd love it if you both signed this today.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll talk. We're happy to talk after. Thanks. One over here.
My second question for you is, we're seeing that you're being locked out of these apartments as Musk and his friends are running through them. What are you doing about someone? There was a video yesterday, they're outside and they're saying, look, we're locked out. Well, we know, so what are you doing about being locked out?
So on the first question, we actually have an answer. They actually have already brought an anti-abortion bill before the Senate, and we defeated it about a week ago. And of course, you have the pledge from both Dick and I that we are going to obviously not just vote against any bills to ban or restrict access to abortion. We're going to lead the fight against them. So there's no issues there. I mean, listen, in terms of the lack of entry to these buildings and the lack of access we have to understand what's going on inside, for now, that is going to be litigated. And you saw that Musk was just kicked out of the Treasury Department. We will confirm today whether that is true. We will litigate our access to these departments. And the first step you need to take in building this kind of thoughtful resistance is to first go through the normal channels, right? The court process to get your rights enforced. If the courts are corrupted or you aren't delivered the kind of relief that you are guaranteed by the Constitution, you look to other tactics. But we will go through the court system right now to make sure that we see what is happening inside these departments so that we can do our proper oversight as members of Congress.
Let me just add a word on abortion, because it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the states being important. We're going to be very proud of Connecticut. We're going to be very proud of Connecticut. I was a state senator, and at the time authored and fought for the first codification of Roe v. Wade in state statutes. Connecticut led the way. Connecticut has more recently led the way thanks to Jillian Gilchrist. Very proud of Jillian. Stand up, Jillian. Who worked with this guy, Matthew Blumenthal, who's from Stanford, to protect doctors in Connecticut against criminal prosecution from other states and to protect women who come from other states to have abortions here. And this is an example of a state statute that makes a real difference. Now, at the federal level, I've authored a bill for the last close to 15 years. It's called the Women's Health Protection Act. The Women's Health Protection Act tries to do at the federal level what Connecticut has done in protecting Roe v. Wade. When we first wrote the bill, the idea of reversing Roe v. Wade was unimaginable. The Supreme Court is doing unimaginable things literally every term now. But states can make a difference. Connecticut can make a difference. Support your state legislators and your local officials, Republicans and Democrats. Women's reproductive freedom used to be a bipartisan cause. We need to make it bipartisan again. And we need to make it an American issue again, protecting the demagoguery from Donald Trump.
All right, let's have our last two comments here. Apologize, guys.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Pirelli from Fairfield, Connecticut. And like you, Senator, I think you began this afternoon stating that you choose to live in a country where we love our neighbors, not fear them, and I agree with you. And I have been really struggling, as everyone apparently has, with all the chaos that we are living in today. My concern and my question, and this is not necessarily for you, but I would like to have a discussion soon versus later. What are we doing to prepare ourselves for 2026 and 2028? How are we navigating? What are we doing now that we've reflected about the mistakes that we've made in reaching the American people? How are we going to navigate to take back the House and to gain more senators, and then in 2028 make president a Democrat? What are we doing now? Because I know we're consumed with all that's going on now, but we can't lose sight that in less than 21 months, we're going to be electing new congressmen and senators. What are we doing?
Brad Klein, Bloomfield, DTC, and my wife and I are proud grandparents of a grandson. We're worried about them, and we're really also worried that the Democrats might have learned the wrong lesson in the last presidential campaign, that is an issue that they don't want to go near. Whereas those of us who love our kids want them to be protected. So what can we expect from the Democratic Party moving forward?
I'm going to answer real quickly. First of all, we're working every day on 2026, 2028. I'm also working on 2025. We're going to have a lot of local elections in 2025 here in Connecticut, and there'll be others around the country. Every election counts. Elections have consequences, as you know, and we can't just talk to people who agree with us. We've got to get out there, do the hard work of winning elections. But in terms of preparing for 2026 and 2028, there's no day that passes without our working on it. And if you like, we can talk afterward about some more of the details. In answering your question, I can't speak for every Democrat, but I think you've gotten a sense of where we stand. And we're going to take that message to our fellow Democrats with your help and support. Thank you.
Listen, we appreciate everybody being here today. Again, we are working 24/7. We don't take a day off or an afternoon off, and so we're going to try to continue our schedule of getting around the state and the country to try to organize this. I'm up for the conversation about the future of the Democratic Party and how we win, but the only way we win is if we still have fair elections and a democracy in 2026. And so we want to do this together, right? We are learning as we go. I'm humble enough to sit here today and tell you I do not have every single answer about the tactics that are necessary, but we are going to lead. We are going to take risks. We are going to speak truth to power because we understand what the stakes are in front of us. These guys are trying to destroy our democracy. They are trying to seize power. They are trying to turn our democracy into some hybrid of an oligarchy and a kleptocracy, right? We are not going to allow them to do that. And so I am thrilled by the turnout here today, the fact that we have people in overflow rooms. This is happening at every single one of our meetings all across the state. We've been at infinite rallies in Washington, D.C. this last week. We will be back down there again on Wednesday. I think both of us feel like the luckiest two people in the world that you have chosen us to be in this spot. It won't mean that we will get it right every single time, but I wake up every single day seized by this moment. I don't sleep at night because I'm seized by this moment, because I realize that both of us have this unique responsibility, given a mandate by you, to stand up for decency, to stand up for humanity, to stand up for democracy. This is one of those moments that you will tell your children about. And you will tell your children about. What did you do? What did you do? What did you do when they came? Right? What did you do when they came for your democracy? What did you do when they decided to try to make us fear each other? What did you do when they decided to turn you against your neighbor. You've answered the call by showing up here today. But I've got that long list of things that you can do tomorrow and Tuesday and Wednesday. You can help us, you can critique, you can add to our list. We are in this together to save our democracy and make sure that this is a nation defined by our love for our neighbors. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.